Yo, what up guys, Mysterious here, and you might be wondering what is this long ass video on my screen right now, and that's correct because this is the ultimate Yone matchup guide. So I made matchup guides for every single champion that we can face on mid lane, and I go in depth on the waves, the mindset, the trades, micro interactions, runes, starting items. Everything that we want to know and that we need to know is going to be covered in this video. This will have you a good baseline understanding of how we should play this matchup, how we should approach them, and how we can actually win the game through them. So I've categorized this in 5 categories, being strong early laners, low damage mages, assassins, fighters, and some miscellaneous champions. So what I did is the mindset, the waves, and the general trading patterns I discuss in the categories. So in strong early laners, I discuss these things and I discuss them differently in the low damage mages, assassins, fighters, because they all differ for each category of matchups. And for the actual individual matchup, you will have the micro interactions, the runes, the starting items, and the things that we have to keep in mind while playing this matchup. As for the miscellaneous section, this is going to be very detailed per champion. So the waves, mindset, traits differ for each miscellaneous champion. So we're going to go in depth for those and not going to be discussing the mindset, waves, and traits apart from them. Then finally, in the description, there's going to be timestamps for every single champion, and also every single category. So if you want to go to either one of those categories or really look at what the runes are for champions that you're facing, then you can definitely go to that section, watch that part, and have a great results with it as well. So starting off, we got a nice blue color on our screen right here, and all the champions that I consider to be in this category have this nice blue color on their screen, so you can easily navigate which champion fits in which category. So what's the mindset that we want to have against these champions? So it's pretty straightforward. We want to minimize early until we hit either Berserkers and or Vamp Scepter, and after that we want to play for trades, and we really want to play to win the lane afterwards. So what kind of trades go with this? Usually these kind of trades go with our E and our Q3, and possibly ult when we have our ult up. As for the early waves, how do you want to play the early waves? We want to let ourselves get pushed in, minimize, catch as much CS as possible, but what's very important here is we want to stay healthy. So what we see in this example is we let the wave slowly come into us, we make sure that we stay as healthy as possible, and once we reach that level 3 point, we're going to start trading with E and Q3, and we're going to start abusing our D shield right here, which is what we're going to have against most of these strong early laners. We got to, of course, hit our Q3 to get these good quality trades. Make sure that we keep the wave thinned, keep it nice on our side. That's generally where we want to have it for like 80% of the lane. So starting off with the first matchup right here, and it's going to be Viktor. What you can see is you can see the runes on the right, the build, the starting items, and the summon spells on the bottom. And I'm going to talk you through the matchup specific notes and any other notes that I think are worth mentioning in this matchup. So against Viktor, bait his Q1 before you engage. Viktor's trading is usually revolved around his Q. His Q gives a shield and also a nice damage amplification on his auto attack. So if we can get his Q1, his shield out before we trade, it's actually going to be a way more advantageous trade for us. Also against Viktor, it's very good to E plus Q2 into Viktor. Why is this super good? Well, if we E and Q2 into him, we're gonna start stacking up our Q3. And if Viktor uses his gravity field at that moment, we can use this Q3 that's stacking up to avoid and dodge the gravity field stun and actually still keep being onto him. That's why we prefer to go E plus Q2. Of course, always E plus Q3 is also still very good. R playing on top of him, amazing, but this is a nice little interaction that you can definitely use and that will catch him off guard for sure. Next up we got Anivia. Anivia does a lot of damage early game, especially if she lands her Q. It's all about her Q in the early game, so we want to dodge it with using E reactively. We can also use our Q3 or R to cancel Anivia R, since Anivia R is a channel. Definitely good to keep that in mind for a bit more extended fights. And we want to have our Q3 stacked up all the way so we can avoid her locking us down with her W and her R combo. We can also like E next to her wall and then have Q3 stacked up, and then make sure that we get our Q3 E back and then go out of the locked up zone. Moving on to Syndra. In this matchup, it's all about Syndra E. If she has E, we gotta be careful. If she doesn't have E, we can easily go onto her because she's just as immobile as a Xerath at that point. So we can play around this E in multiple ways. We can either use our E reactively to her E to dodge out on the QE that she's throwing. We can use our R when she's Eing to actually avoid the CC that it brings and to get back onto her. And we usually just want to play if she doesn't have E up. So we either bait it out beforehand, and if she doesn't have E, we have a lot of time to actually take a lot of good trades and pressure her in the lane. One thing against Syndra is that we gotta be extremely careful about her kill threat, especially from it being around 60% HP. Because if we die in this lane, it gets very hard. Moving on to Orianna. So Orianna is actually very strong early. She's a lane bully for a reason. So what we want to do is we want to give a few creeps up early to stay healthy in the lane. We also want to play on both sides of the lane opposite to the ball. So what do I mean with that is that first of all, we're going to stay on topside river, next to topside river. She's going to throw the ball right there, and then we're going to move to botside river. That means that the ball now has longer way to travel and that we can more easily dodge it, juke it, or even stay out of range and tether it better. That means that we'll save up a lot of HP, and it's just very good as a melee champion to do that into Orianna. Also, one thing to definitely note here is that Ori R can change the direction of RR. RR is very vulnerable to displacements. I'm not sure if you guys have seen it, but for example, if Gragas ults a Yone, while he's ulting, the trajectory will just completely change. And this also is with Orianna R. So if we try to R in her R, we might miss it because of the trajectories change. Next up, Azir. We want to attack Azir by hitting his mana pool early. We can do that by forcing trades with our E, and therefore we can bait out his E, and also by tethering correctly and also giving up a few CS here and there. We want to be very careful with ulting onto Azir in general because he can instantly R after RR cast, and he can push us into the tower, especially if we're on the long lane. So this is not something that we want. So ulting Azir, we gotta be very, very careful with doing that, and otherwise only do it when we have E, so we're a bit less committal. Moving on, Taliyah. Taliyah is not that strong early. She doesn't have too much damage, but she's just very annoying with her E. So with Taliyah, it's also a lot about her E. What we want to do against Taliyah is because her damage is not that high, D-Shield is extremely good with second wind, and we can pressure her instantly with our E when we get level 3. If we get onto her, actually, she's screwed. So once we have R, just plainly ulting her in lane is very good. What we can also do is when we have E up, we ult her in lane, then we can actually E reactively to her W. So Eing reactively to her W is in general very good because that's the main part of her damage. Especially when we're already on her, it's just super hard for her to get out, basically. And finally, E plus Q3 is usually not the best because it's extremely linear, and it gives Taliyah a lot of time to react with her E. Then we're stunned, we're going to take a hell of a lot of damage, so that's not really what we want. Next up, we got Cassiopeia, and I believe Cassiopeia is actually a very hard matchup for Yone. And the only way we actually win a trade against Cassiopeia is she's unable to get her extended poison damage onto us with her E. So the way we do that is by dodging her first Q, because then it becomes very hard for her to get that guaranteed poison damage onto us. So the way we do that is by reactively Eing to her Q. So if we see her gonna cast Q, we instantly E forward onto her, and then it's very hard for her to play against us, because then we can always go back with her E, and her W is actually only cast from like a certain range, so she it's just rough for her. So Cassio can also 100% of the times hit her ult in our Q3 and our ult cast. So if we Q3 in, it's very linear. She can just ult, we get stunned, we die because we get grounded straight afterwards. Same if we just plainly R onto her. Good Cassiopeias especially know exactly they throw the ult backwards and they'll get a guaranteed stun proc onto you. And what can we do against it? Well, not R in the first place. So and that's why I think it's a very hard matchup, because we will die, we will get mowed down if that happens. So be very careful playing against good Cassiopeias, just ulting her plainly, because she will know how to play against it. Next up, we got Vex. So Vex is a neutralizer. What does neutralizer mean? That means that she's going to neutralize lane and make sure that it's very hard for us to win the lane. It's fine if we don't win the lane. It's fine if we're even. And it's fine also if we're like a few CS down. Because in the side lane, we're going to be way more effective than a Vex. So against Vex in general, we want to play when her fear is down. If she doesn't have the fear, she's going to use it a few times to poke you down or on the minions. That's the time where we can strike. Because without the fear, it's pretty easy to get onto her. And when we are on top of her, it's pretty hard for her to escape. Of course, her fear is her passive, and our dashes, we got a lot of them, feed that passive stacks. So we want to minimize individual dashes so that she has less time, less uptime on her passive and on her fear. Zoe is next. Zoe is actually a very good matchup for Yone. Be careful though, because early she can mess you up big time. So we gotta respect, make sure that the wave comes into us slowly. But what we can do always is, if we get bubbled, we can always E to cancel her sleep effect. Yes, this works every single time, even on 0 attack speed with a long cast time on our E. We can also time our Q3 and our R with her R to guarantee a hit. It's like LeBlanc W, but then she has to go back. So if she goes back to that spot, we can time our Q3 and our R at that location at that time. And she's basically going to get caught up into it. So that makes it very hard for Zoe to consistently win this lane. Ahri is up next. We got to be very careful with Ahri because our E and Q3 are very linear. And if Ahri has a bit of reaction time, she's going to charm us, she's going to combo us, and she's going to run away. There's nothing that we can do about it. So these are the traits that we do not want to take into her. So we either want to trade when her charm is down, or if we baited it out, or if we can dodge it one way or another, or if we can go back into our recast our E and therefore negate the charming effect. We also got to be very careful with her mobility in lane. We cannot just plainly ult onto her because she has mobility and she will ult out. Although in some scenarios, and that's what I personally like to do into Ahri, because Ahri is such an ult-reliant champion, what I like to do is I just trade ults. So I will actually ult her in lane with understanding that she'll probably dodge it with her own ult, but then she doesn't have ult for the next 70-80 seconds, and she's not really able to get a good roam off. So that way I can isolate her in lane and I can beat her on my own terms and on my own strengths. Nice little quick tip that I definitely recommend you guys trying. Next up, Annie. Annie's a burst mage. So what we do is we get a bit of early MR. And when we do that, it's just basically not going to do that much more for the rest of the game. Jeff is not that strong. Preferably play when her stun is down. Of course, preferably she can stack it up pretty quickly. But once we're onto her, it's very hard for her to play, especially with a bit of MR. And in the side lane, it gets even harder. The longer the game goes, especially with MR, it's very important to get MR. Without MR, she's going to one-shot us. But with MR, it's very hard for her to play the game. Next up, Karma. So Karma's very hard early. She's a giga lane bully. That's something that we got to understand. That's something that we got to respect. Give a few creeps here and there. And be very careful with her early damage, sustain, and shields. She can just be very annoying. But once we get a few, once we get berserkers, once we get a few items, Karma really struggles. And especially in the side lane in mid game, she cannot do much against us on Yone. We're just gonna trample her. She wants to be with her team. She wants to facilitate someone, and we're very strong in the side lane. That's where we actually beat her. Against Karma, we can use our R at the end of her W. When she is in W range, she's of course in R range for us. And she's always going to be moving to get that W proc. And we can actually R at the end of it to avoid the root, get onto her, and surprise her with a nice extended trade on top of her face. Careful with 2v2s and other skirmishes around mid. Karma is very strong in those kind of skirmishes, and it's very hard to play against that. Almost unwinnable because of what Karma does and how her kit works. So be very careful of those skirmishes, avoid them. Next up we got Ryze, and Ryze is actually a lane bully. A lot of people tend to forget that Ryze is a lane bully. He has high base damage, a lot of good base stats, and a lot of good rune choices that he can make with starting items. He's just a lane bully. We gotta be very careful of that, understand that, give some creeps and preserve some HP, and then later we can trade a bit better with him. Don't stand in or near the minion wave. Ryze doesn't care about the minion wave. He uses it. E plus Q from him. It bounces, deals a lot of damage, especially when he gets a few levels into that. So be careful about that. Also, Ryze can space extremely well. We don't want to blindly Q3 into him or blindly ult into him. He's gonna run away. We want to make non-committal trades with our E, so that once he actually gets that distance from us where we cannot reach him, he's unable to space us and we can just safely go back to our E. Lissandra. Lissandra is a very easy matchup if we take Glance. Few things to keep in mind. She can cancel our Q3 dash with her W. Her W interrupts the dash. The wind thing still goes off, but the dash can still be very annoying. We cannot get out if we want to, and make sure that it doesn't catch you off guard. Also, Cleanse allows us to play aggressively because suddenly we are less threat of enemy jungle, that we can E plus R in team fights without getting instantly blown up. Do care in 2v2 skirmishes when playing against Lissandra. And one more thing to keep in mind is Lissandra's ult has a small cast time. We can actually E back, recast our E when we see her cast her R. Of course, we gotta make sure that she doesn't W into R, because then we certainly cannot do it anymore. But if she decides to R first, we can definitely react to it. Neeko. Yeah, we can skip this one, I think. I'm just kidding, no. But who even plays the Shep, right? Main thing against Neeko is her E. Dodge her E and we're usually fine. She is looking to root you, especially behind your minions with her E. So don't stand too close behind your minions. You will get rooted and you get a massive damage onto you by her trait. That's basically the only damage she can do. So what we do is we reactively E to her E. And if we get to a place where we can R onto Neeko, we should do it, especially if we E up. And even if she ults at that point, we can just E out and avoid the damage, basically. Pretty good stuff. Alright, we're jumping into the AD mids. First of all, Tristana. Tristana is a lane bully if we're not careful. So she can bully us heavy, preserve HP, give a few creeps, and we need to trade with her though. We have to trade with our own E. We can't sit back, otherwise she takes our tower. Hence is why it's so important to preserve some HP early game. Give some creeps so we can actually get these trades onto her. She has no sustainer in her kit, and that means that the more trading we do, the better it is gonna be for us. One more thing to keep in mind is we can cancel her jump with our R, also with our Q3, but her R also interacts quite interestingly with our R. It's also displacement, so keep that in mind, that RR can be messed up if she ults us in her cast time. Next up we got Lucian. Very, very, very hard matchup in isolated lane. Thank God it's not always isolated lane. Why is it so hard? Lucian can E reactively to RQ3 and RR, so it's very hard to hit CC onto him and get onto him. So what we want to do is we want to minimize, but we want to definitely be opportunistic. We don't want to be a coward, basically, so to say. Mainly, what we want to do is prefer early vamp over berserkers, so we can actually play the lane and sustain a little bit. The goal is not to win this one. The goal is to be as even as possible. Even if we're down like 20 CS, it's going to be okay, because this champion is not that good in the mid game, especially in the current meta. So we will definitely outskill him and anywhere we go, and he's just going to struggle afterwards. Next up, Akshan, Lucian's brother. Very hard early game, give CS, go early vamp. He has a lot of self-peel with his shield inbuilt, goes bone plating. So if we want to go in, proc that first, or let him proc his shield first, if we can do that. Otherwise, I think if we have berserkers and early vamp, we can definitely start taking some trades into him, because then we have some lifesteal and it's going to be way harder for him. His sustainer lane is less good. His early damage is just so huge. Make sure that we stay healthy, minimize, farm up early, and once we hit our spikes, we can definitely hit the go button here. Next up, we got the new category, low damage mages. And this is colored green because this is free food. Yes, that's what I'm trying to explain here. Your mindset should be like, this is the most free shit that I'm ever gonna face here. And that's true, because these champions are so weak that they heal us with their poke, and that we can actually do whatever we want. So try to win from level 1 and 3 already, and especially from Berserkers onwards. What kind of trades go with this? Of course, the standard trading patterns with E. We want to R onto them whenever we get the chance. And one more thing that we can also do here is we can just Q3 forward and we can be completely fine. We're not really exposing ourselves because of their low damage. So if we can just get a nice Q3 onto them, just do it and see if it brings something nice. So how do we want to play the waves against these champions? It's very similar as to the early mages, but right now, especially once we reach level 3, we want to be way more aggressive, and we want to try to keep the wave on this side as much as possible. This is not going to always work against the high early damage mages. They might bounce it, hold it on their side. Against these low damage mages, yes, it's definitely going to be possible. Look at this beautiful, beautiful thinning. Beautiful thinning. We keep the wave on our side, and Aurelion Sol is going to struggle eventually because we reach our E. Boom. We get on top of him. We get a nice little trade. And he doesn't do enough damage for us to be generally threatened. We got our potion still. We can regen up. And we just do this a few times until they're forced to take a bad reset. So the first mage that I'm talking about here is Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate is all about his W. His W cooldown is 8 seconds. Definitely want to keep in mind whenever he W's 8 seconds after the cast, after throw actually. We can basically always E forward and we can recast our E to cancel his stun. We will get stunned on the back end though, but not near him, and that's good to keep in mind. The main thing in this matchup that I want you to care about is early enemy jungle ganks. Yes, his his W actually gives a lot of setup for early jungle ganks. I've had it a lot. I picked Yone into EF. I was like, okay, this is going to be the freest lane of my life. And then I got ganked on a transition gank level 2 or level 3. And there goes your lead and there goes your lane. So definitely keep that in mind. Make sure that the enemy, make sure you know that the enemy jungle can do that. And you could also run clans in this lane if you like. It gives a bit more safety, maybe better for the 2v2s, but it's not necessarily needed. So Lux is next. Lux has a very rough time into Yone because Yone can dodge her abilities. We can E reactively, we can just walk around, her move speed's quite high. But Lux does actually a lot of damage if she hits her abilities. So we gotta make sure that she doesn't hit her abilities one way or another. So we can E plus Q3 forward since our recast of the E cancels her CC. That means that we're pretty safe against her. Also, be careful, don't stand too much in the wave. She usually likes to push the wave with her E. And if we play an R onto her, she's basically dead. It's very hard for Lux to get out of that. It's very hard to hit the stun afterwards too. So Lux just struggles once we get on top of her. And that's actually a trend in all of these champions here. They really struggle when we get on top of there. We can also dodge her Q with our R. So if we see her throw out Q, projectile speed's very low. We can we can channel our R, TP, so whatever it is, TP behind her and dodge it that way. And yeah, she's basically a dead man. Next up, Veigar. We don't want to scale on this matchup. We don't want to handshake him. We want to actually pressure him, want to make sure that we push these trades. And the only thing that I really want you to understand is how his cage interacts with our E. So the cage doesn't stop the recast from our E, but it does stun us at our initial location. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. Also, if we E plus Q3 forward into the Veigar, we will get stunned and our projectile will continue, but our character will get stunned and will get stopped. So we won't make the full dash. Next up, Corki. Very weak early laner. Once again, only thing that we got to be very careful about is if he gets free poke on us constantly, because his auto attacks do actually deal a bit more damage than other low damage early game mages. So into Corki, we want to engage into as many trades as possible, and we want to do that with our E as soon as possible and as early as possible in the lane. Bait out his W as much as possible as well, because it costs so much mana that he's not able to do it more than 2 or 3 times in the lane before he's and how is he going to lane when he's right? So Ziggs, same principle as Veigar. We don't want to scale on this lane. We want to force trades. We don't want to handshake. especially with E, be very non-committally, and try to push the pace of the lane, get some chaos going in the game. That's basically what we do to actually get Ziggs into a nasty situation. Also, don't stand in the wave. He wants to push the wave, especially once he has lost chapter, he like one-shots it so quickly. So stand outside of the wave and don't catch his abilities to your face. Malzahar is surprisingly weak early game, especially because his E is an overtime damage ability. And what's the best stuff against that? Doran Shield and Second Wind. We outdamage him, we outsustain him. Only thing that's slightly annoying is his spell shield and his ult. But we can definitely deal with that, and that's not the biggest problem in lane. We want to kill his Voidlings first if he tries to shove the wave. So if he tries to shove the wave, that's going to be his main damage on the wave. If we kill them first, he has a very hard time unfreezing a wave if we have it on our side. QSS is very good against Malzahar. Not too early. It kind of depends per game. Sometimes you can go Berserker, sometimes you can go Vamp, sometimes you can go both, sometimes you can even go entire mythic item before we do it. It's a bit game by game dependent, but definitely good to pick up every single game. Then we have Xerath. Xerath, very similar to Ziggs, Veigar. We want to force trades, stand outside of the wave, don't let him skill up. His abilities do actually do a bit of damage. We can use our E reactively to his abilities, definitely possible. Main thing to keep in mind about Xerath is his stun. So his stun stuns longer the further he is away from you. So if we E plus Q3 into him, yes, he can stun us, but the stun is going to be very, very short. So we can definitely do that, but the closer we are to him, the harder of a time he's actually going to get. Next up, Aurelion Sol. Actually a very weak early laner. The only thing that we got to be very careful about is his early roaming ability and his early Q damage. We can actually avoid that with our E. We want to use our E whenever it's up to trade onto him. And also a nice interaction with his R. We can use our own R to cancel his, not his R damage, but his RCC rather. But same with his Q. If you see him throw out his Q, we can just channel our R. He's usually walking in a straight line. It's very easy to hit. And we can avoid the CC. Next up, Karthus. Terrible champion into Yone. I don't know. I've never seen a Karthus win into a Yone. The only thing that we gotta make sure that we are very careful about is to not catch too many isolated Qs. Tether his Q, stay healthy, and mainly go for non-committal trades. So use our E to the max. If we jump onto him with Q3 or R without using E, he's actually going to be able to kill us or return kill us, so to say, because of how his champion works and when he dies. And he's able to hit so many Qs onto us afterwards, very hard to dodge. So mainly go for these non-committal trades, and once he's behind, he cannot play. So next up, Vel Koz. Vel Koz is also pretty similar to the other arcane mages like Xerath, Ziggs. Try to get onto him as much as possible, make it messy, avoid getting hit by his E. His E is actually pretty big, that's mainly where his damage comes from. His E secures him a W, secures him a Q, true damage on his R. But if he actually decides to channel his R, we can ult him to cancel his channel, get a free ult onto him, and once we're onto him, once again, he's in trouble. Alright, one of my favorite matchups actually, Vladimir. So Vladimir is very interesting. Only thing that we gotta be very careful about with the Vladimir matchup is his Q3, is his Q3. So his big heal, his big Q is what we gotta be very careful about. That's the only time where we actually respect him and make sure that we do not take any trades into him is when he's got that big Q up. So generally, it's all about Vladimir's W. On the other hand, the CD is 28 seconds, and if it's down, he's a sitting duck, so to say, and he's very free to trade up on. Also, the main trading pattern that I like to use into Vladimir is this one. That's that we stack Q1 beforehand, and then we E plus Q2 into him. So what's going to happen then is then in the meantime, while we are still in our E, our Q3 is going to stack up. And then Vladimir is faced with a dilemma. When is he going to W? Is he going to W at the start and then catch our Q3 into a nice little trade afterwards, after he pops out of his W? Or is he gonna W at the end and dodge our Q3? That's his dilemma. That means that we get a guaranteed bit of trading damage onto him. So this trading combo actually guarantees a bit of damage onto him, and these are the trades that I like to go. So E plus Q3, I mean, it works, or E plus R, or just ulti in general. It's just rough if he has W up, because we all know he's gonna react, and that's the stuff that we do not want. Then we're just gonna waste an ability. Next up, we got Swain. Swain heals you early game. He does no damage. The only thing that we gotta be careful about is his Conqueror, if they take Conqueror. And post 6 usually only take non-committal trades. So if we actually commit post 6 onto Swain, and we don't have damage to kill him, he can heal back up with his ultimate. That's what we gotta be pretty careful about. Also, skirmishing post level 6 is very hard against the Swain as well. And finally, avoid getting hit by his E. It's very easy to dodge, but keep in mind that he gets a lot of HP back from hitting his E, and we want to avoid that at all costs. Next up, Zilean. Against Zilean, we want to mainly go for trades with our E, because if we trade committally with our R or with our Q3 without Eing, he can space us, annoy us, stun us, run around us, and actually be very, very annoying for us. So mainly we want to go for non-committal trades with our E. That's what Zilean struggles against. We can just E out whenever we feel like, and we don't put ourselves in any kind of danger. In general, scaling, side laning, very good against Zilean. Also stand outside of the wave, because he's gonna throw bombs on the wave, and we don't want to get hit by the bombs, of course. Seraphine, very similar to Zilean. We want to definitely beat her in the side lane for sure, but in lane as well, stand outside of the wave. And a nice little interaction that we have against Seraphine is that we can recast our E or cast our ultimate to avoid Seraphine CC. So if we see her do the same thing with her ult, we can actually channel our R, and we TP behind her, dodge the entire thing, and she's gonna be screwed. Also, recast E, of course, her R has a channel time, and we will be able to dodge out on the CC. Then Brand, haven't seen this champ in a while as well, but he actually deals quite a bit of damage, especially if we catch his full combo to the face. So be careful with a linear Q3 into him. And he's also going to be able to walk away straight afterwards. So that's the only thing that we got to be careful about. Don't get stunned, and stand outside of the wave to avoid the fire spreading from the minions. So the next category is going to be the assassins. And assassins are actually very hard for Yone because of the extreme amount of threat that they have onto us post 6. So what I want you to know is in these matchups, it's mainly about R, enemy R, assassins R. They're so R dependent usually, and it really depends on how much kill threat they have onto us, if they have it up or not. So what we can do against these assassins is, I want you to have the mindset to play to win early. Try to get a few advantages pre-first base, pre-level 6, because we can be very courageous before that, and be very passive and careful post 6. If they have R up, we respect them. If they don't have it up, we can actually go for very nice trades. So what kind of trades go with this? Of course, go for usually extended trades. A lot of these assassins want to go take short trades and actually chip down at you quickly. We want to go for extended trades to counteract that, and they usually have a bit longer cooldowns. And with extended trades, we will be utilizing our shorter cooldowns and our high attack speed way better. So keep the wave on your side. That's something that we're going to go into right now. But when the wave's on your side, make sure that we use our abilities to go for extended trades. Avoid short trades at all costs. So that's what we're going to see right here. So the way I would like to play the matchup against assassins, just let yourself get pushed in, hold the wave on your side, try to avoid these short trades, boom, and do it like this. Just keep it chill, we're very safe here, and once we reach our E, we can go for these elongated trades. So it doesn't have too much threat, we hold the wave on our side, he's gonna lose minions like this. Perfect, that's the way we want to do it. And post 6, of course, be very, very careful. So, set. What is important is against Zed. Zed is a very hard matchup. Main thing I want to light up here is the fact that we take Conqueror instead of Lethal Tempo. It's very hard to get a lot of auto attacks off against Zed, so I prefer to take Conqueror against him. Make sure that we get more AD rather than more attack speed, so that the abilities that we hit, being our W, deal actually a bit more damage. Gets us a net bit more value, in my opinion. What we can do here is we can get an early clot armor against Zed. Against Zed, it's all about not dying, making sure that he doesn't one-shot us, and once we're behind, it's very hard to play against him. So early clot definitely counteracts that. Also, if he ults us, we want to use our E to dodge Zed Qs. In his ult, his Qs are the main damage that's gonna amplify his ult damage. So if we avoid his Qs by either dodging them, Eing them, we're in a pretty good spot, and that's going to negate a lot of his damage. Same with Exhaust. I love to take Exhaust in this matchup because we can just exhaust him when he ults onto us, and that basically means he's not able to kill us all that reliably. And as I said, yeah, just don't die, please. Next up, Katarina. So the goal in Katarina lane is to keep her in lane. And that's very easily achievable by keeping the wave on our side. How do we do that consistently? Well, Kata has auto push in her kit being her Q. So what we do is we just chill early and we only last hit, and we try to last hit later than Katarina. So what's going to happen if she's going to Q, the wave's going to slow push into us, then we tin it accordingly, keep the wave on our side. And what's nice for Kata, she has no inbuilt wave clear, except for being it very committal. So what's going to happen if the wave's on her side? She is actually forced to E in to clear the wave, and she's not able to do that consistently and reliably early game. So she is in a very, very rough spot. Keep the wave on your side and basically starve her from CS. Make sure that she's going to go for roams onto side lanes. Be very careful of avoiding her to do so, or otherwise letting her miss as much minions and farm as possible if she goes for these roams. Care with E and Q3 forward. If we just Q3 and E forward, she's gonna shumpo behind you, she's gonna ult, and she's gonna win the trade. So be very careful with just committing with an E and especially the Q3. Next up, Akali. So this is a very, very bloody hard matchup for Yone. Also here we take Conqueror, same reason as said. We don't get a lot of auto attacks off in this matchup, so I value the raw damage that we get more than that. Against Akali, it's mainly about not getting hit with her E. So we gotta be avoiding our linearity with E and Q3 forward into her. Also, she's extremely strong post level 6. We don't want to skirmish fairly against her. I actually made a video that goes in depth into this matchup, and I really recommend you checking it out. It's going to be in my description, so it's easy for you to find. So definitely recommend checking it out to really get good at this matchup. Fizz is next. And Fizz is actually one of the easier assassins. So the main thing that we gotta do against Fizz is not grief it. Yes, just don't grief it. What we gotta do is we don't E and Q3 forward in when Fizz has E. He dodges it, he counters it, but we want rather let him trade into us and then chase him with E. So what's gonna happen is he's gonna Q, W into us and then back off with his E, like the usual Fizz trading pattern, non-committally short trades. That's what we want to avoid, no short trades, because he's gonna win those. Then we E after him to chase him in his E and actually get a nice extended trade onto him. Fizz is very long cooldowns. He's not going to be able to match it, and he's going to struggle massively. Bone plating is key. Fizz wants these short trades, long cooldowns, committally. So if we have bone plating, that even reduces his amounts of trading windows that he has into us. So it's just going to be a very hard game for him. And that's exactly the way we like it. So Qiyana's next. Qiyana's very hard. Here again, avoid short trades. She's going to try to take these short trades all the time with you. And especially if you E plus Q3 into her, she's going to avoid them with her movements or with her abilities. She's going to then do a short trade, non-committally, go stealth. And it's just very hard to trade against her. So just avoid short trades and make sure that we do not get one-shot by her ult. Therefore, we want to get cloth armor. In general, Qiyana, extremely tough matchup. Echo. Here again, we want to avoid short trades, so we also want to keep the wave on our side. Otherwise, Echo is going to be able to jump in and run out, and that's not what we want. So Echo's trading is all about his Q. If he doesn't have Q, it's our agency in the lane. He's going to use Q to farm because Echo is all about his Q. He's going to use Q to trade, and so we got to keep in mind, if you use Q on the wave, it's our time to trade onto him. Also, we can react with our E to dodge Echo's Q when he Q E's us. So a lot of Echo's trading pattern is E, Q into you, and then he gets he gets the E and he gets the Q and then auto attack and he sprints out. So that's something that we want to avoid, and we can do that by reacting with our E. And then he only gets the E and the auto attack, and he doesn't have his passive stacks to get the move speed. So that's our time to trade back onto him. Next up, Talon. Talon is also a king of short trades. And that's what we want to avoid against him. And early Clot is also good against Talon. There's a lot of burst damage. And he's a bit less good against extended trades here as well. So we want to trade with him when he isn't able to get his passive. His passive is the 3 marketing to get the blood damage. And if he's going to throw out a lot of Ws on the wave. And when he does that, that means he's unable to get his passive fully procced. So that's the time that we can actually Q3 into him and make sure that we get a nice little trade on top of him. And then finally, we got Diana. Diana as well deals a lot of damage. Want to avoid short trades, keep the wave on our side. And the only main thing that we got to be very careful, that we really got to understand here, Exhaust is very good against her because Diana is quite committal. And we can dodge her Q with our E. So her Q is that round thing that's going. And if she throws that onto us and we dodge it, she's actually unable to E onto us. Because then, she's able to do so, but she won't get the second cast, and it makes it very hard for her to dish out regular damage. So dodging Diana Q with our E is actually very solid. Right now we have the second to last category, which are the fighters. And these are very, very tough for Yone. And the reason for that is because they're usually quite bulky. We're not able to one-shot them, but they are better in extended trades than us. And better in short trades than us. So then we just get outstatted here. And what we got to understand is that we just want to minimize and only be opportunistic. We can definitely win them if we play towards our strengths. But if we once play towards their strengths, it's just going to be rough. And if we're behind, say goodbye to your game. So it's very important that we're going to be on our A game right here. And especially value our life and value our trades as well. So what kind of trades go with this? So here as well, to be safe, we want to have the wave on our side, and this allows us to go for extended trades. If we can get a quick lethal tempo stacking up, and if we can get a good E with that, some extended trades will actually go into our favor, and that's the stuff that we gotta understand, that we gotta replicate. And 2 or 3 extended trades, and we might just be in a winning lane. And of course, when Yone is snowballing, when he's ahead, he's actually quite good, even against these bad matchups. So, what are the waves that we want to play into these champions? We want to basically play the waves like a wave. So have a wave effect in your head and understand that we just chill. We let the wave come into us, and what's going to happen a lot is that the wave is going to crash. We're not able to hold it, and that's fine. So what we do then is we play with the wave. We're going to play ping pong. This wave is going to be bigger than because of the fact that it's slow building into the enemies. As you can see here, the Yasuo, he's taking it very slow. He's making sure that he doesn't get the push here and gets the wave stick on Yone's side, because that's exactly what Yone wants. He lets himself get pushed in, but it does mean that Yone's wave is getting bigger, and means more safety for us. And therefore, we can actually make sure that we get a wave pushing and crash it and be somewhat safe. So another way that we can play the waves into these fighters is actually by pushing hard early. This doesn't work into every fighter, but into a champion like Aurelia or Renekton, we're actually stronger level 1 and 2, so we can actually force push prio, and we can actually, as we can see right here, we can bully them off the wave, go for these like auto-attack Q trades like this, boom, get the wave prio, bully them off the wave, stack 2 or 3 waves, and make sure that they bounce after, so afterwards we can keep them on our side. Of course, this is extremely dangerous because we put ourselves in a very vulnerable position, and what you see right now is that I actually get ganked and that I die, and that's not really what we want. We want to value our life extremely high. but it's definitely a possibility that we can be very aware of and that we can utilize in our games. So the first matchup from the fighter category that we're going to talk about is Aurelia. And as I noted, we do win the first 2 levels, but we got to make sure that we keep the wave on our side afterwards, because we want to avoid getting frozen on at all costs. Aurelia likes playing with her stacks, playing extended trades as well, and she does way more damage than us, so we want to avoid going for these extended trades once she has her stacks up. The way we can actually outplay Aurelia is to dodge her E with RE. Because her E is a big part of her damage, because she can recast her Q. If we avoid that, we actually make sure that we have a way better trade against her. Post 6 against Aurelia is brutal. It guarantees basically a hit of her Q, an initial hit of her Q onto us. And the only way we actually can survive that is with Exhaust. I personally really like to take Exhaust against Aurelia. It's very good and helps us survive the lane, because that's the matchup, that's the understanding that I want you to have here. The mindset is to survive this lane. It's going to be very hard, but Aurelia is harder to execute in team fights than Yone. Next up we get Yasuo. So this one is very specific, it's very in-depth, and I made a PDF about it. It's going to be in the description, so check it out, click on it, and leave me some feedback about the PDF. Do you like it? Do you not like it? And I'll definitely get back to you. So check it out. Next up, Renekton. This one as well, it's so hard. It's the standard Yone counter in top lane. And they will also pick it in mid lane, because Renekton is also able to be played in mid lane. People counter it, and it's beatable if you know what to do. But you gotta do exactly what you need to do. There's no room to mess up. And even if we're against a very good Renekton, it can still be very hard. So there's a few micro interactions with the Renekton sense where we can actually keep our shield up. And it's all going to be discussed in an in-depth video that I made on this matchup as well. Definitely recommend checking it out. It's extremely helpful, and it will help you win this terrible, terrible matchup. Next up, Pantheon. So the key to win against Pantheon is to keep the wave on your side. It's crucial. It's so important. The reason to do that is because that way it's unable for him to W on you. So if the wave is on our side, if he Ws onto us, he's committing. And if Pantheon commits, it's very hard for him to get out. So it's very hard for him to commit if that's the case. That means that he can also, we can also take extended trades onto him. Pantheon is not that good in extended trades, it's better in short trades. It's hard for him to take these short trades when the wave is on our side. Also, Pantheon is pretty tough. Pantheon is not that good at shoving out waves. So if the wave is on our side, it's pretty hard for him to actually crash it. He only has his Q to do so. Also, there's 2 amazing interactions with Pantheon E when it comes to our Q3 and R. So Pantheon E blocks all the damage from one side. And what we can do, especially with our R, is if we R Pantheon when he's Eing, we get behind him. And yes, also the damage applies when we're behind him. So that means that we can actually apply the damage from behind and still keep trading with him. Also, if we are close to him with our Q3, we can Q3 behind him and it's still going to deal the damage. Especially if we have our E up. So if we have our E up, usually Pantheons hold their E until the end of our E duration to block out all the E damage. What we can do then is we can R behind him or Q3 behind him to actually get all the damage still going off. And as I said, Exhaust, we want to take extended trades. If we slow him on the long lane, it's very good against him. Then next up we got Rumble. Rumble is a bit of an interesting one. Yeah, the main thing that we want to do against Rumble is play around his W shield. When it's down, we can actually trade against him. If it's up, it's actually big shield and it's very hard to trade against him. So it's mainly about his W and avoid short trades. Keep the wave on your side so it cannot burn you when you're trying to shove the wave and thin out the wave in the meantime. That's what Rumble likes to do. So keep the wave on your side, go for extended trades, and you should be fine. Then finally, right here, we have the miscellaneous category. So the mindset, the waves, and the trades are going to be different for every single champion in here. Hence is why I'm not going to do an overall discussion about it, but rather go in depth on what to do in every single matchup. So let's get into this one. First one, LeBlanc. LeBlanc is actually pretty tough. Reason for that is she has a lot of inbuilt mobility. She's strong early, and you will get targeted by the enemy jungler. And that's rough. But the mindset that we want to have here is that we gotta understand that being even is somewhat winning. We will probably not be able to be there. And the main thing that we want to achieve in this lane is isolating the lane. If we are able to isolate the lane and make sure that the enemy jungle is not able to gank us or bully us, then we are actually pretty fine. Because we got some sustain, LeBlanc doesn't, and we can actually outplay a lot of her burst. And because she's super E reliant, it's very easy to dodge her E if we react accordingly. But the main problem is the jungler and the gank threat that LeBlanc and enemy jungle has onto us. We gotta respect that. So she will probably push in the first few waves into us. That's fine. And if it's possible, if we can, try to hold the wave on our side, because that's ideal. We're safe then. But if that's not the case, try to play with the bounce, right? If the wave bounces out and we get threatened by the enemy jungle, or we don't know where he is, we gotta give the wave, or we gotta call our own jungle. Otherwise, you're just gonna die, and that's something that we gotta understand. Like sometimes we're just gonna be screwed in this matchup, but that's okay. If that's not the case, we try to E forward and clear the wave non-committally. In general, very hard matchup, and try to play safe and steady. Silas, love this matchup. So I actually made an in-depth video on this matchup as well. I think it's great. It really shows you visually how to play this matchup. There's a lot to it, a lot of in-depth, in-detail stuff. Main thing that I want you to know is try to beat him until his lost chapter and after our mythic. In between there, he's stronger than us, so be careful then. Next up, Galio. There's actually multiple wave states possible against Galio, but the main thing that we want to understand is that we also want to isolate this matchup. We don't want any 2v2s. Galio is very strong into 2v2s. So what we either do is we perma push Galio in, because we're just way stronger in trades than Galio. We have way more threat onto him. And we actually make him drop CS under tower, because it's very hard for Galio to CS under tower. Or what we do is we keep the wave on the side and we force extended trades into him. Can sometimes be iffy, as a lot of CC in this kit, but that should still be okay, because with our E, we can actually cancel out on, with the recast of our E, I actually mean, we can cancel out a lot of his CC, and a lot of his trading comes from applying that CC and getting that onto you. So both ways to play it, pushing or keeping it on your side, is both fine, depending on what Galio wants to do. Always keep in mind he's looking to make plays on the sides, looking for skirmishes, and we want to be pretty careful with him getting that off, because that's actually not what Yone's too good at doing. So try to isolate the lane and keep him in lane as well. Kassadin next. So Kassadin, what I want you to do is I want you to understand that we have to beat him. How do we beat Kassadin? We get the wave on our side as soon as possible. And the way we do is by 2-stacking and then bouncing it out, letting the wave slowly bounce out to our side and thinning it accordingly, keeping it there. We expose Kassadin that way, and because Kassadin is actually not a champion with too much wave clear, we can actually keep the wave there and make sure that he is stuck and exposing himself. Vamp is very good against Kassadin. Kassadin is very good at short trades. Like, he's very good at short trades. So we want to avoid short trading, especially post 6. He's going to go for a short trade into you, then ult out. No, we don't want him to do that. We want to then go for an extended trade and actually pressure him. If we go multiple short trades, we're going to just lose the lane. And it's pretty embarrassing if we lose into a Kassadin. Let's be honest here. Therefore, Vamp is also very good. We're going to trade a lot, so early lifesteal is insane. Oh, and by the way, if you're playing against a very, very, very good Kassadin, yes, they'll probably be able to minimize and they will beat you. But otherwise, I mean, you're still gonna get flamed probably. Let's be honest here. 80 champ losing to Kassadin, you're still gonna get flamed. So make sure that it doesn't happen. All right, next up, Heimer. Heimer is super hard. Just minimize against Heimer. And that's the thing that we gotta understand. If we go even this matchup, we can be proud of ourselves. Heimerdinger can reactively E to our Q3 and guarantee a stun. Same to our R. He can guarantee a stun. And if he has towers placed there, then we're just gonna get tuned, and it's just so hard to play. So I don't know. It's not a nice matchup. Just minimize as good as possible and pray that your team wins, actually. Then finally, we have Singed. So what we gotta understand is Singed wants to kill your team. He's gonna roam all the time. So what do we do with the waves? We either perma shove him in, or we keep it frozen on our side. Singed has no way to unfreeze a wave when he's even or behind. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna pressure Singed either by pushing or by keeping the wave on our side. It's easier to pressure. We're never gonna be able to kill him. He runs too fast, he dodges all of our abilities, he's too tanky. It's very hard to kill a Singed. So with him roaming all the time, we gotta make sure that we either make sure that he loses as many minions as possible on mid by either pushing it or keeping it on your side and pinging your team away as soon as possible, because the only way he's gonna win the game is by getting your side lanes. So pinging is crucial in this matchup. And yes, it is somewhat of a flip, but at least try to control it from as much as possible and make him lose as much as possible in the meantime. So guys, that's gonna be it. I put a lot of work, a lot of effort into this video. So I thank you all for watching, and if you liked it, I would really appreciate a like and a subscribe on my account, and it would mean the world to me. So I thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day. I see you next week with some more videos. So thank you. Bye-bye.